Welcome to Futureproof, where we'll discuss the jobs of today and evolving tech of tomorrow. Follow Microtrain on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter for future webinars from Futureproof. My name is Samantha Galloway, and I am a Senior Program Director at Microtrain. I've been here for over 10 years, helping our professionals select the best training and certification for their personal and professional growth and advancement. Today we're going to talk about our Certified Supply Chain Professional class, or CSCP, which became a part of the Microtrain catalog about 5 years ago. And today we have one of our lead instructors, Carrie Fechner, joining us for Ask the Expert. Carrie has an MBA in Quality Management from University of Tampa and a PhD in Organizational Development from Benedictine University. In addition to being an APICS certified instructor, she is also a faculty member at Northern Illinois University. Carrie holds several certifications, including CSCP, CPIM, CLTD, and several others. If this does not keep her busy enough, she's been involved in the APICS ASCM organization for over 25 years, including being a former president of the Chicago chapter. Carrie has a proven track record helping organizations be successful with ERP and best-in-breed technology solutions. She's here today as our expert to answer questions about supply chain for us. We're going to start recording. So Carrie, thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We're going to cover a couple of topics today, including supply chain certifications, some of the similarities and differences in some of those credentials. What changes we expect to see over the next few years, and what someone can do to prepare for a career in this field. So I'll just kick off with the very first question. Carrie, for those of us that need a refresher, give us a quick definition of supply chain in your own words.
Absolutely. Well, there's operations and supply chain, and sometimes people use those terms interchangeably, which is not correct, actually. Operations is the taking of inputs like subassemblies, raw materials, knowledge, and transforming that input into products and services that have value to our customers. We transform them by using different processes, machinery, the different departments within an organization, purchasing, logistics, transportation. So inside an organization, the linkage of all those functional areas is called the supply chain. Outside of the organization, also those linkages, department to department, function to function, that is all part of the supply chain.
Thank you. So I want to take a moment, and I should have led with this. I'd like to encourage questions from the room today. Anyone that's joining us that has something they'd like to ask me here at Microtrain, or they'd like to ask Carrie about ASCM or supply chain certification specifically, I encourage you to please put questions into the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation today. I think we'll probably take a minute at the end for a quick Q&A. But for right now, if you have any questions you'd like answered, please feel free to put those in the chat. We'll make sure to make time for that. So Carrie, second question, you're a certified instructor.
Correct.
And you teach courses in this space, both for Microtrain and for the ASCM chapter.
Yeah.
There are several different certifications. You hold most of them. Tell us a little bit about the leading certs and kind of what those differences are for the people today that are looking to find out what's the best fit for me.
Absolutely. Well, we have CSCP, which is certified professional, C as certified supply chain professional, CPIM, which is certified production and inventory management, and CLTD, which is certified logistics, transportation, distribution. The first one, CSCP, is primarily supply chain, higher level strategy, all the linkages, the entire supply chain, from making products to shipping products to planning products. CPIM is the legacy certification, the first one that ASCM had created. CPIM is operations. So we take a deeper dive into planning and scheduling and inventory management and forecasting and transportation. CLTD is a newer certification because we realized, or the organization realized, that we needed more knowledge, deeper knowledge into those areas. So it's very detailed. Importing and exporting. How do you do contracting with carriers? How do you store product? Depending on where your experience is and what your future intention is with your career, you may want to start with one or all three. If you are currently an operations person, I think CPIM is a good fit for you. If you're in a function outside of operations, maybe your sales, maybe your IT, a lot of IT people take CPIM or CSCP rather, CSCP, because it's a higher view, more strategy. If you're in the transportation distribution space, obviously CLTD is also a very, very good fit for you.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. And for those of you that like to learn more about the certifications specifically, there is more information at the ASCM
Yes.
Fox River chapter website, which we're going to share again before we log off today. So you know how to find more detailed information on all of those certifications. There's also a full schedule available at microtrain.net for the upcoming courses that we have available. All right, great. So this is where we get to the future-proof part. This is my favorite part of these presentations. We're going to talk a little bit about technology trends, right? I read a white paper recently. Someone from the Honeywell organization published something and stated a large percentage of the supply chain ecosystem is still really dependent on manual processes, right?
Yeah,
so hand picking, hand inventory, hand counting things, hand loading and unloading, a large percentage, which surprised me. What we are seeing, however, and this author feels that there's going to be a tipping point, right? Where automation and robotics and AI are going to start to play a large part in automating some of those repetitive actions and movements. This could potentially allow companies to improve efficiency, safety, accuracy, all meanwhile while lowering costs. Do you see that trend as well?
Well, absolutely. You're talking about the manual processes of picking, et cetera, but in systems management technology, many companies have a legacy homegrown applications that they link together to try to achieve their goals. It's all about visibility in supply chain management, right? Having visibility into not just your data, but also your suppliers' data, giving your customer visibility into your data, all that connection hosted in the cloud. Customers expect that. They want to know, where are my products? When are you shipping it? They don't want you to fax or email a document for them to re-enter into their systems. Companies need to look at how am I easy to do business with? Do I have these systems? Yeah. Many supply chains, to be a member of that supply chain, you need to have the connectivity. You need the systems. If you're a supplier to the Walmart system, which is highly automated, I use them as an example often because they are gold standard. They expect their suppliers to use their systems to determine, when do I place a replenishment order? They don't have teams of people placing those orders. They put that burden on their suppliers. But all that connection allows efficiency, effectiveness, fast movement of inventory. Inventory at rest adds no value. So they
lower
get
costs.
Time visibility. When you shop there, they scan it at the register. It's point of sale information that gets transmitted to their computers, and they calculate actually their suppliers calculate, right? How much is needed and when and where. So it's all this connection that's important. And that's where the real movement is going. The information, the technology is more scalable. So it's not just a big Walmart. There are lots of smaller, medium-sized companies that can take advantage of all these open platforms and all this visibility and connection in our world.
I am going to follow up to that question. And without naming any names, there is a gentleman on the call today that is famous here at Microtrain for saying, the robots are coming.
Probably.
And so what I'm hearing you say is I'm hearing data. I'm hearing better, more efficient ways to store data, to put data in the cloud, and then making business decisions better because we have more information.
Right.
I'm hearing cloud storage. I'm hearing process improvement, things like Six Sigma. would you suggest that someone looking at a certification like CSCP or CPIM follow up with one of these additional technical skills as well?
I would, and I've been on a lot of projects rather, and I'd also suggest you become a Scrum Master, because on most projects, are traditionally waterfall approach. If you don't know these terms, you're going to need to know them, right? You're going to be on a project. Continuous improvement is a way of life for smart, successful companies, and many projects are managed in an agile format. And I'm going to be doing that. And you saw how many certifications I have. You know why? Because you need the terminology, you need the language, the knowledge of, to be an effective team member on these projects. So I would suggest that definitely.
Well, Carrie, when you're ready to get Scrum certified, you know who to call.
Well, I've got a couple of people emailing me and asking me if I'm interested, but definitely doing that, right? But, our certifications are all about that, giving you that common language that is international. It is agnostic of systems. If you go into SAP or JD Edwards or some enterprise resource planning system, you have some wherewithal. You understand, okay, what are the fields and where are they and how can I get to them? I've used many systems and I never feel overwhelmed or intimidated, not at all, because I know what I'm looking for, because I understand the data and I have the language. That's really the power of these certifications. You're part of a wider world and you understand best practices.
Excellent. Excellent. So thank you. I have just one or two more questions, and then we've got a couple things popping up here in the chat that we'll get to. But in this kind of future-proof vein, when we're talking about the idea of all of the technologies we're seeing, what's emerging, how to stay relevant, tell us a little bit about what you see in jobs and the changes. So for example, what skills will still be around? We talked a little bit about the things that are going to be relevant. What jobs do we see maybe becoming extinct because of robotics and automation? And what can somebody do to make that pivot? Any suggestions there?
I want to follow on that last comment about what's going to become extinct. Any process job that doesn't add value, because companies are hard pressed to eliminate non-value added processes, technologies, steps, work that's being done, because the customer doesn't care about it, but you're paying for it. You are consuming resources, money, time to become more cost effective, more profitable. Those are low-hanging fruit for being eliminated. So if you've got a very manual job that doesn't add value to the customer, that is opportune. That is where it'll be probably gone, it'll go away in the future. But in your point about the robots, right? It's all about the value add, because does it really add value for you to maintain multiple systems? Does it really add value for you to determine the replenishment? Walmart answered that question. They said, no, it doesn't. We can transmit this data to our suppliers and they can automate it and they can do it for us. But that's really where it's at, right? The professionals in this space will always have opportunities, because you can spend your time continuous improvement, right? Innovation, inventing new ways of working, the things that add value to our customers. That's where you need to spend your resources as a company. And we know that this space jobs are growing and are very strong, many opportunities. The pandemic did a lot of things. It put supply chain on the tongue, the tip of the tongue for everybody. When they went into a store and couldn't find what they wanted, they observed all of these empty shelves as a retail customer. And they heard somebody say, well, it's supply chain. Well, what is that? So there's more visibility and awareness of the importance of supply chain management. How about the baby formula shortage?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's on everyone's mind.
The plant went down and lots of people said, well, how can that be? How can you have majority of baby formula going through one plant in Michigan? So it exposed the risk that we have in our supply chains. All those chips, that plants in China had to be shut down because of COVID. Now we've got a ripple effect in our supply chain. And now we've got vehicles that are sitting in fields, not without the chips that they need to run those materials, those are vehicles rather. So you can ask some questions. If we have some visibility, what would you do? If you had the knowledge, you had the data, you knew you weren't going to get your inbound orders, you knew that manufacturing wasn't running, would you slow down building the things that would have to wait? Would you build other products? Would you continue on running because of economies of scale? Supply chain management is definitely the trade-off of a lot of different decisions and coming to the optimum trade-off based usually on cost. So I'm kind of talking all over the place here. I apologize. I tend to do that.
No, I think we're all with you. I think that one thing we've all learned since the beginning of the pandemic is how painfully reliant we are in all forms of e-commerce. I mean, we saw the toilet paper shortage of 2020, chips, automobiles, now baby formula. And it's still, I think, surprising to a lot of us what a house of cards this all is when we talk about the dependency we have and really ultimately how few suppliers are out there and how one shortage in one raw material or one single factory can send, you said, like I said, a ripple effect. And this industry, this demand for this, kind of supply chain e-commerce, it's not going anywhere. We're seeing huge growth numbers.
No, you know what's needed? Smart people like yourself. Smart people, certified, educated, you have the knowledge, the ideas, you're ready to improve, innovate, invent different ways, solving problems. I've always told people that have an interest in these careers, you're good problem solvers. You're good at identifying the right data, the right people to talk to, all the options available to you, putting together doing that trade-off of all the options you could choose from, right? But that's what's needed to solve these problems is smart people who figure out how do we design a resilient supply chain? How do we link people together, get that early warning signal on, do we need to switch to a different supply chain? Do we need to get another supplier in the mix? Big companies that have massive supply chains, like a McDonald's, another good example. I mean, what are they known for? Are they known for a good hamburger? Are they known for a consistent product? Every McDonald's in the US, globally, you go in, you know what you're getting, you have a clear-cut understanding. You will never go into a McDonald's. The ice cream machine might be down, but you'll always be able to buy French fries. You'll always be able to get chicken nuggets. And part of their supply chain management is that they have many, many different suppliers and they weigh risk. I work for a supplier back in the day that invented the chicken nugget, true story. They don't have the majority of the business for the coding system, which is a 4-part system, but part of the year, they have part of the business. They transfer that demand as a way of flexing a bit and just testing their supply chain, just in case our primary supplier goes offline, there's some kind of disruption, listeria, some pathogen, it's food industry, right? So let's test out and see if our backup suppliers can step in and supply us what we need to make sure, do we have any disruption to our business? Because that's critical, right? So it's all this data that you have to manage. We need smart people. That's just the bottom line here.
That's so fantastic to hear. And I think that everyone at Microtrain would agree we're all speaking from the same place. That's definitely the trend we see in training. All jokes aside, the robots are taking over these kind of low value, repetitive. McDonald's is a great example. McDonald's is one of the earliest examples I remember as a young adult when I became aware that they were so focused on time and movement and started eliminating little things like even filling a soda now is automated in a McDonald's because they found that low value activity, that repetitive activity could be replaced with automation. So those kinds of things are forcing the workforce to get smarter, focus on data, focus on process improvement, focus on working on the robots, programming the robots, right? So those kinds of things are exactly the trend we're seeing here too. So great, interesting background.
Tons of opportunities for people who are smart. And let me say one last thing, a lot of online virtual work that's available. I mean, I get emails people calling me every day. I'm currently working on a project. I'm virtual 100%. If that's a goal for you, there's a lot of work out there. And if you have the skills and the knowledge, you have the certifications, you can get your foot in the door. So I hope you're there. I hope you go for it because it's available for you.
That brings us to one of our first questions. And I want to share with you a question that came in before we started today through an email. I want to share with you a question from one of our workforce partners. Let's talk a little bit about education and requirements. The question came across in this supply chain field. what are some of the education and experience requirements that you commonly see? For example, are companies typically looking to a bachelor's degree or higher, numbers of years of experience in order to qualify for higher level jobs? And I do think we talked a little bit too about, even on the entry level side, recent college grads are finding work in this space. So talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, as a former hiring manager, I didn't always look for a college degree, depending on what the position was. I often hired on attitude and aptitude more than that, but also wanting them to have an awareness of best practices, which is supported by certification, to be quite honest. I knew that they'd be working in various systems. They'd have to be on projects that I had, where often, I'm implementing something different. And to make that transition, they needed that awareness of, what is the process? What's the best way to do it? What are the terms that are used? But that's what I looked for. I mean, if you have, I would say it depends. That sounds bad because that's a consulting answer. It depends. But, if you have a college degree, and it can be in any field, it doesn't have to be in operations or supply chain. If you tag on with that a supply chain certification like what we offer, that's going to prove that you have a dedication to being in that industry.
And best practices, yeah.
Absolutely. It's that access that you need. And again, that's agnostic to the organization, the technologies they use. We don't teach, well, in SAP, this is where the field. No, we don't teach any of that. We're not prescriptive. We're agnostic to that. We talk about best practices. And, when you apply to a job, you need to be conversant. You need to speak to it. And this gives you that power. As an instructor, I do everything I can to build in real world examples so you can ground your learning in that. And I ask for students to give their examples as well of what they've seen, and you can compare it to what you're learning in the program. I think there's always a great learning moment, teachable moment, as it gets called, right? You might ask yourself this question: I have learned it in this program, but that's not the way I've done it in the past. Why is that? And then you can say, well, maybe, how could we have done it better? That's a value you add as an employee, is improving and suggesting and doing something better than what you currently do.
So that brings us to our next question. And Ralph Logan asked in the chat, I hope I'm paraphrasing this appropriately, but that brings me to a great question. Carrie, you teach the Certified Supply Chain Professional CSCP course here for Microtrain. And I think the question Ralph has is, does the curriculum you deliver reflect this movement towards automation and data? Do you talk about that in the course?
Yes. Yeah, there's a whole chapter on technologies that's included. Again, it's agnostic to specific technologies, but some high level information, as a professional in this space, you're not an IT person maybe, but you do need to understand it well enough to understand how is data managed, what system does it come from, where is it transferred. This gives you that language. And the farther up you go in the ladder, you need to have that knowledge because you're building partnerships with other areas, with IT primarily. Remember, IT is an enabler. It enables all this connection and visibility of data, but it's very high level, but it's good. Because that's the information, that's what you need to know. It doesn't teach you how to be a programmer. It teaches, though, to know what a middleware program is, what the cloud is, so that you can be conversant.
What a business intelligence tool is, those kinds of things. Yeah. And there's no getting away from data. I think we're finding that across all industries.
No, absolutely not. It's all about how you manage your data and what's the system of record and how often does it get updated and who maintains it. We mentioned data governance rules. How do you control that access? Because if the quality of data isn't good, the output is bad. We have to recognize that.
So thank you so much. I know we're getting pretty close on time here. I want to just make sure if there's any other questions from the audience, please feel free to put anything you might want to ask in the chat. I am going to have Juan put the contact page back up again real quickly before we log off, so you know how to reach me and you know how to reach Carrie. But in the meantime, again, feel free to use that chat window to ask any questions that you might have for either me here at Microtrain or for Carrie and her team over at ASCM. I also encourage you to check out the ASCM website. That is foxriver.ascm.org for information about that professional organization, how to become a member of that society. And then also, of course, you can visit us here at microtrain.net to ask about some of the classes we discussed today, not just certified supply chain, but you might want to also contact someone from my team about financial assistance and different tuition programs and things like that we might have available for you in not just supply chain, but Six Sigma, data analytics like Tableau, things like certified Scrum Manager and Project Manager. Those things are all options here with my team.
And take advantage. Absolutely. I tell people all the time, contact Microtrain, go on their website. Lots of opportunity.
We appreciate the partnership, Carrie. It's been a wonderful one. I hope that you enjoy working with our students. I know our students say really great things about you as an instructor, and the rest of your team has always been such a great business partner for us. So thank you. Doesn't look like we have any additional questions, so I'll go ahead and bid you adieu, let you get back to your day. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all.